Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
It is my pleasure to introduce you to our speaker this evening, Mr. Maurice Glinton from Freeport, Bahamas. Mr. Glinton obtained an MBA in International Relations. He read law at Cambridge at St. John's College. He's a barrister of Gray's Inn in London and admitted to the Bahamas bar in 1980 and to the Turks and Caicos bar in 1981. He's a counsel and attorney practicing in Freeport, specializing in constitutional and administrative law. And with much further ado, I introduce you to Mr. Glinton.
Let me say thank you for the invitation to speak to you, who are patrons of the Institute, and to say that I am pleased to have been invited to speak on such a boring topic. You obviously have run out of speakers. And I can tell from the effort which was put into getting me here by Mr. Rick Lowe, evidenced by his persistence, his dogged patience, and I don't know whatever else. I mean, in trying to ensure that I keep my promise to him, which I seem to have been making for a long time, because I had a hard time keeping up with my day-to-day work and commitments such as these. And it doesn't hurt sometimes if we have mutual friends like Leandra, who is not here, I think she's away today, every now and again tugging at me to say that, you know, I think you should do this, I think you should overnight in Nassau, which for me is like a death sentence. But nevertheless, this is my home, and it's a place I love, particularly coming up in the morning from the airport and going back in the afternoon. And when I have to, I do it every day in a week without ever overnighting. But strangely enough, this is the second time in about 4 days when I have opted to do just that. It is an important topic, and it is one which is not likely to be too fascinating to persons other than law students, perhaps, and people like yourselves who probably don't have very much else to do, just to see what other aspect there is to what has been going on seemingly on a day-to-day basis as reported in the press. And let me say here too that, and you should accept this very sincerely, that recent reported events in the newspapers was not part of the conspiracy between Mr. Lowe and myself to find something interesting to talk to you about. What you saw acting out in the newspaper over the last, I would say, month, and every now and again, like a malaria attack over the last several years, is very real. And those of us who are able to convince ourselves that there is a disconnect between what we've been reading in relation to the judiciary of this country, some of the social ills that we see reported on, and again, this evident lack of accountability by persons who ought to be much more public rather than just paying lip service to some of these things. That we have to be conscious of how these things are putting more than just a gloss on that which we stand to inherit or that which we stand to lose. And caught up in all of this is the potential, in fact it's a little bit beyond that now, for losing our sense of values. One of those values about which I trust, and I know it is something which is near and dear to the hearts of the patrons of this institute, value of freedom and liberty, the ability to engage in commercial undertakings, contracts, to negotiate, and to be able to enter into relations that you know, once fairly entered into, are likely to succeed or fail, but that in any event, one is able to predict with some degree of certainty outcomes. In the society that I see has come about, which I think is a threatening specter that is around the corner, on the horizon, however you wish to see it, to our sense of freedom, our sense of inheritance. This is lack of accountability. Now, I focus on accountability in relation to this third branch of government. And I make the case, let me say here too, because perhaps I'm also assuming too much, because I have prepared a paper, evidently in advance of this, but not much far in advance, which I have sent on to Mr. Lowe, and hopefully in time he will circulate it for those of you who wish to read it. Now, I'm looking at the numbers here, and I want in fact to have a discussion. And I want that discussion to be one perhaps only engineered by me, but one in which ultimately you participate. You participate in simply during the question and answers. And I would not be too disturbed if you even interrupt me in the course of what I have to say this afternoon, because I'm not going to stick strictly to this. I'm going to give you a synopsis of what it is that I've said here, the case I've tried to make here, and allow you to ask me any interesting things about the bar, about government, about the judiciary. And do not feel hesitant to ask me about discrete matters. The only matters I will have concern about discussing are those matters which are before the courts and might present a problem because of what I know to be the rules regarding sub judice. But apart from that, I'm more than happy to discuss what I believe to be some important aspects in trying to achieve this important level of accountability from a practically non-existent, non-functioning branch of government. And what do I mean when I talk about accountability? I'm not talking, that is, political accountability. I'm not talking about judges being able to report annually on how many cases were decided, how many warrants for death penalties were read. That's not what I'm talking about. I am talking about moral accountability. I am talking about intellectual accountability. I am talking about an institution that